Chapter 1552. After the three beasts saw this scene, they also looked at each other. They knew nothing about this kind of thing, so it was better to leave these things to them to deal with. Xia Jiqing fell into silence, and her eyes couldn't help but look at the cave. She could feel the faint fluctuations of power coming from inside. However, she was not clear about the specific situation inside. Yuan Xiaoman sat next to Bai Junyu and talked with him from time to time. Sometimes there was a burst of laughter, apparently they were talking happily. Feeling such an atmosphere, Xia Jiqing didn't know why she felt that her mood was particularly irritable. She immediately closed her eyes and entered the state of cultivation. It was a pity that under such mood, her heart could not calm down at all, nor could she enter the state of cultivation. She could only carefully listen to the conversation between Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman. Yuan Xiaoman and Bai Junyu were actually just talking about some trivial things, but Xia Jiqing felt that her heart was blocked for a while, and she didn't know what to say. It was as if there were countless flies flying around her, making her very irritable. She just wanted to be free from it. Under such circumstances, Xia Jiqing only felt that time was really passing like a year, and it was extremely difficult to bear. In the cave, Bailey Hongzhuang was meticulously carrying out the seal. Her mental power had been tight, carefully controlling every change. From the time she crossed over to the present, she had not used the seal for a long time. Therefore she had to be more careful. Not to mention that this wind spirit tiger cub was her contract beast. Just thinking about the trust and expectation in the mother's eyes when she left, she must be careful and not let the wind spirit tiger be in danger. This time was very slow for Xia Jiqing, and it was also a very slow process for Bailey Hongzhuang. The sweat on Bailey Hongzhuang's forehead slowly dripped down, but her eyes were tightly fixed on the seal in front of her, and there was no distraction. Finally, under the precise control of Bailey Hongzhuang, a seal quietly formed. Bailey Hongzhuang's hand gesture changed, and a seal quietly appeared, and then the wind spirit tiger cub was sealed inside. A dazzling light appeared, bright and dazzling. Even Gong Shaoqing and the others who were cultivating outside the cave could not help but open their eyes when they noticed the light. That was because the light was simply too dazzling. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but stand up. Her hands were tightly clasped together. She looked at the cave nervously and worriedly. She didn't know what the final result would be. Did the boss succeed? Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman also stood up at the same time, nervously looking at the cave, hoping that Hongzhuang would bring them good news. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not come out even after the light disappeared. After noticing this situation, Xia Jiqing's heart couldn't help but sink. Boss hasn't come out yet, could it be that he failed? Hearing this, Gong Shaoqing and the others looked at each other. They had never seen a seal before and naturally did not understand what this situation meant. Only Mo Yunjua's eyes flashed with a light of understanding. He had seen sealing masters seal demonic beasts before, so he was not unfamiliar with this scene. Chapter 1553. With Mo Yunjua's voice falling, everyone looked at Mo Yunjua. For a long time, Mo Yunjua had been an experienced and knowledgeable existence in their team. Mo Yunjua had heard a lot of things that they didn't understand. It was precisely because of this that everyone had always admired Mo Yunjua. Boss succeeded? Xia Jiqing looked nervously at Mo Yunjua. Then why hasn't boss come out yet? Mo Yunjua shook his head slightly. According to my understanding, the appearance of that light is a sign of success, but why Hongzhuang hasn't come out, I don't know. Gong Shaoqing and the others looked at each other. Even Mo Yunjua didn't know the specific situation, they didn't know either. There was only one way now, and that was to wait. Because no one dared to go in and disturb Bailey Hongzhuang. Once it affected Bailey Hongzhuang, it was likely to cause Hongzhuang to fail. This was something that no one wanted to see. Compared to the various guesses in everyone's hearts, Bailey Hongzhuang sat on the ground and gasped for breath, wiping the sweat on her forehead. She had to admit that this seal was indeed a laborious thing. It was no wonder that every sealer would ask for a lot of rewards when sealing, because this was really not an easy thing to do. After not sealing for such a long time, she only felt that her technique was a bit rusty compared to before, so she spent more energy. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the intact monster egg in front of her. Although she still looked very tired, there was a smile on her face. Fortunately, her seal was a success. She didn't fail. Under the anxious waiting of Xia Jiqing and the others, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly appeared in everyone's sight. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing and the others immediately greeted her. Boss, did you succeed? Looking at Xia Jiqing's nervous look, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, guess? Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was still in the mood to joke with her, Xia Jiqing immediately knew the result. Success. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. It's inside. Go take a look. Xia Jiqing's eyes lit up and she immediately walked into the cave. She couldn't wait to see the appearance of the monster egg. After entering the cave, Xia Jiqing saw a yellow monster egg appear in front of her. The round and smooth eggshell was covered with complicated patterns. At a glance, it gave off a mysterious feeling, causing people to involuntarily feel a little shocked. Xia Jiqing took the monster beast egg out of the cave. Bai Junyu and the others also greeted her after seeing the monster beast egg. In reality, this was the first time they had seen a demonic beast egg, and they couldn't help but feel a wave of novelty in their hearts. So this is a demonic beast egg. Yuan Xiaoman's face was full of curiosity. Although she had a rough idea of what a monster beast egg looked like, seeing it with her own eyes still gave her a strong feeling. It's amazing. Bai Junyu couldn't help but sigh. Hongzhuang is really amazing. She can even master this sealing technique. It's really admirable. Boss is simply omnipotent. Xia Jiqing looked at the monster egg in her hand, her eyes full of excitement and joy. As long as she contracted it, she would have her own contract beast. She never thought that one day she would really be able to get a contract beast. This feeling was really delightful. Chapter 1554. Just as everyone was curiously sizing up the demonic beast egg, Mo Yunjue slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His handsome face was filled with concern as he asked, "How are you?" He knew that a sealer would consume a lot of mental power during the sealing process. He noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's pale face and weak expression. Come to think of it, Bailey Hongzhuang did not come out previously because she had consumed too much of her mental power and could not come out for a while. In his impression, a sealer was not young anymore. They were rather powerful and their mental power was even more shocking. Given Bailey Hongzhuang's strength and age, it was already very shocking that she could seal a demonic beast. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang was sealing a wind spirit tiger, which was even more remarkable. Logically speaking, this was simply impossible, but it happened right in front of his eyes, so he had to believe it. Sensing Mo Yunjue's concern, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "I'm fine. I'm just a little exhausted. I'll be able to recover after resting for a while." You won't be able to fully recover your mental power in a short period of time. You must rest well. There's no rush for this, so don't risk your life. His dark and deep eyes were filled with emotions, and there was even a trace of heartache in the depths of his eyes. As he spent more time with Bailey Hongzhuang, he became more aware of Bailey Hongzhuang's hardworking personality. No matter what it was, she would always do her best to do it. Regarding this point, even many men were ashamed of their inferiority. She was always so bright, so beautiful, and so memorable. The longer he spent time with her, the stronger his feelings were. Bailey Hongzhuang did not notice the change in Mo Yunjue's expression. She immediately smiled and said, "I understand, don't worry." Given her current state, it was indeed impossible for her to seal a second time. At the very least, she would need to rest for a while to recover. Otherwise, not to mention her body's condition, the seal would fail if there was even the slightest mistake. They had spent so much effort to obtain 3 wind spirit tiger cubs, so they definitely could not treat them like this. After Xia Jiqing and the others observed the monster eggs for a moment, they returned to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and asked with concern, "Boss, how are you?" Xia Jiqing was a little annoyed. She was so focused on the monster beast egg that she didn't even notice her boss's body. Thinking about it, boss must have used up a lot of energy to seal them. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "I'm fine. Don't worry." As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on the demonic beast egg. She continued, "This demonic beast egg has been successfully sealed. You only need to drip a drop of blood on it and perform the 7 months ritual with it." Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded slightly and sat down beside Bailey Hongzhuang. "Boss, thank you." If Bailey Hongzhuang had not thought of a way to deal with the various dynasties, they would not have been able to obtain the wind spirit tiger cub. If boss had not successfully sealed the wind spirit tiger with the sealing technique, she would not have been able to obtain a wind spirit tiger contract beast. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xia Jiqing, her lips curled into a smile. "With the feelings between you and me, saying such words is too much of an outsider." Just as Xia Jiqing had given her the 9-tailed zither, they never cared about these things. Chapter 1555. She had not practiced the sealing technique in her previous life for a long time. When Bailey Hongzhuang used it again, she only felt a sense of familiarity that she had not felt for a long time. She had never been willing to forget the skills she had learned because of lack of practice. Sometimes she had the opportunity to try it out, which was not necessarily a bad thing. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's warm smile, Xia Jiqing's eyes became brighter. For a long time, the most fortunate thing for her was knowing the boss and following her until now. Otherwise, she would still be a student of the Kanglan College. Perhaps she had entered the special enrollment class, but it was far from comparable to her current results. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman beside Xia Jiqing and said, "It takes a lot of mental power to seal a monster egg. I can't continue to seal it today. Let's continue tomorrow." Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman quickly said, "We are not in a hurry, you have a good rest." Bailey Hongzhuang being able to help them seal the monster egg was already something that made them feel very fortunate. How could they have any other requests? Bailey Hongzhuang and the others returned to the cave again. In this forest there were still other teams of cultivators passing by. Therefore they still had to ensure that they were not discovered. Fortunately, the area where they were located was very remote. Generally, cultivators would not come here. With the improvement of their strength now, they did not have to worry about spending the night outside. However, with the existence of Baishir, they did not need to worry about this problem at all. It was because of Baishir's aura that there were no monsters within 100 miles. Therefore, when the cultivators passed by here, they did not stop at all and left directly. Compared to the calmness of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, the mood of the cultivators of the three dynasties was extremely bad. They had searched the surrounding area again and again, but the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty seemed to have disappeared into thin air. They could not find any traces at all. This really made them annoyed. Under their observation, they realized that the cultivators from the other dynasties were also unable to find it. Even with so many of them searching together, they still could not find it. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were truly extraordinarily capable. I don't know where these guys went. They couldn't have gone to a city far away, could they? Fang Wenqing had an impatient look on his face. Of all people, it just had to be a cultivator from the Tiangang dynasty. Compared to his previous arrogant words, he now felt that his face had been slapped painfully. Our pursuit speed isn't slow. If they've gone to a city far away, we should be able to find some clues. Cheng Hifeng's brows were tightly furrowed. After they had not found anything, they had met up with each other. They both knew that the other had not found anything. The characteristics of Bailey Hongzhuang and her group were very obvious. As long as any cultivator saw them, they would definitely be able to recognize them. However, along the way they had asked many cultivators who came from other places, but they did not get any information at all. Just this point alone was enough to prove that this was not the case. Perhaps they had overlooked something in their search. Forget it. Let's just guard this city. They'll come out sooner or later. Chapter 1556. Even if they found the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty on the day of the assessment, they could still snatch it. He did not believe that the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were so capable that they could hide from their sight during this period of time. Hearing Yu Junfei's words, Fang Wenqing also nodded his head. He had already patrolled this area several times and had long lost his patience. It was impossible for him to continue patrolling, so he might as well wait here peacefully. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty would not be able to run anywhere. Cheng Hufeng saw that Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei had made up their minds, and a complicated light flashed across his dark eyes. For some reason he had an ominous feeling in his heart. In the beginning he did not take the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty seriously. However, after this simple contact he felt that the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were completely out of his control, and it was beyond his expectations. He had a feeling that the development of the situation would not be as simple as they thought. Perhaps the other party would do something unexpected again. However, given the current situation, he really couldn't think of anything unexpected that would happen. Even if the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty found helpers, as long as the cultivators from the three dynasties joined forces, ordinary people would not be their match at all. Thinking of this, Cheng Hufeng let go of the worry in his heart and decided to wait in the city with Yu Junfei and the rest. He had specially arranged for the cultivators to pay attention to the outside of the city. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest wanted to go around the city, they would still notice them. He did not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest would not enter the city. Bringing along 3 wind spirit tiger cubs was already extremely eye-catching. Not to mention them, even if other cultivators saw this scene, they would also attack them. Therefore this secret could not be kept. He believed that even if the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty avoided them, this news would spread to their ears soon. However, the cultivators from the 3 dynasties had never expected that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest would directly form a contract with the wind spirit tiger. If they continued to search now, there would still be a glimmer of hope. However, when they chose to wait, this hope was completely shattered. The next day, everyone walked out of the cave again. Bailey Hongzhuang's mental energy had recovered after a night's rest. She immediately began to seal the second wind spirit tiger. But this time the one who was nervous and worried was Yuan Xiaoman. After all, every seal had a certain amount of risk, and the success rate was never 100%. While Bailey Hongzhuang was sealing the wind spirit tiger, Xia Jiqing was making a contract with the monster egg outside the cave. Last night, everyone had gathered together and boss needed to rest, so she did not make the contract. Now was the best time to make the contract. After knowing that Xia Jiqing was going to do July, Gong Shaoqing and the others stood up and guarded her. He also had to be careful with the contract. If he was disturbed, the consequences of failing the contract would be very serious. While Bailey Hongzhuang and others were busy with their own affairs, Di Beichen of Tiangang sect also showed a smile on his face. Chapter 1557. A charming smile appeared on his godlike handsome face. His pair of black eyes were overflowing with light, bright and dazzling. As long as Hongzhuang came out of the assessment, they would not need to be separated in the future. As soon as he thought of this, Di Beichen's mood became better. This was something he was looking forward to. However, a touch of worry quietly reflected in his eyes. Di Beichen's thin lips slightly pursed, revealing a bit of nervousness. Since Hongzhuang participated in the assessment, he had no news of Hongzhuang. He did not know whether Hongzhuang was safe or not. Han Xiling was also a variable. If Han Xiling was determined to make a move on Hongzhuang, with the strength of Hongzhuang's team, it was really unknown. Because of this, on one hand, Di Beichen was extremely eager for the assessment to end quickly. On the other hand, he was very afraid. Yes, for as long as he could remember, he had never known what fear was. However, ever since he met Bailey Hongzhuang, he understood what fear was. That kind of worry, apprehension, and anxiety was enough to drive people crazy. He knew very well that Hongzhuang was his weakness. She was his reverse scale and the person he was most worried about. Now he only hoped that Hongzhuang would return safely. In the future, with him guarding Hongzhuang, he would not let Hongzhuang be in danger alone. Ever since his master went to investigate the previous news, he had not returned. The situation in the sect was now completely under his control. He had also sent people to investigate again, but all of this had been done in a very secretive manner. Now that so much time had passed, it would be even more difficult to investigate. In this kind of matter, there was only one place that could help: Shirtian Pavilion. Shirtian Pavilion was the most famous assassin organization in the Xingxian continent. At the same time, it also had the largest information network in the Xingxian continent. Whether it was to kill someone or to obtain information, as long as you could pay the price, the other party could find out the information you wanted. All along, he did not have a good impression of Shirtian Pavilion. This was because such a huge force was completely shrouded in darkness, unable to see the sun. But at the same time, he could not help but admire the power of Shirtian Pavilion. To be able to gather so much information, one's connections had to be shockingly powerful. He had spent so much time but still could not find out where Hongzhuang's parents were imprisoned. Therefore he decided to seek help from Shirtian Pavilion. Although he could not find out, he believed that Shirtian Pavilion could find out. However, after he went to Shirtian Pavilion, the other party did not immediately accept the task, nor did he completely refuse it. He only left a sentence. Regarding these important matters, the ordinary people of Shirtian Pavilion could not make a decision. Only after their young master returned could they decide whether to accept or not. If he was willing to wait, he would wait. If he wasn't willing to wait, he could just give up. Di Beichen had no choice but to wait. His master of Shirtian Pavilion's back. Shirtian Pavilion, Shirtian Pavilion, Shirtians of Shirtian Pavilion. Shirtian of Pavilion. Of Shirtian Pavilion of. He believed that he would be able to obtain some news by then. Chapter 1558. After 2 days of hard work by Bailey Hongzhuang, she finally succeeded in sealing the remaining 2 wind spirit tiger cubs. For Bailey Hongzhuang's 100% success rate, Mo Yunjue and the others had no other thoughts other than admiration. Every time Hongzhuang did something, it was an unspeakable shock. After such a long time, they had already understood. Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman were both in the process of contracting, and Xia Jiqing had completed the contract 2 days ago. At this moment, Xiao Feng was lying comfortably in her arms, looking very intimate. Mo Yunjue sat next to Bailey Hongzhuang and the two chatted idly. After the assessment is over, which sect are you going to join? Bailey Hongzhuang looked curiously at Mo Yunjue. The rest of them naturally did not need to be said, they would definitely join Tiangang's sect. However, after getting along with Mo Yunjue for so long, she had never heard Mo Yunjue talk about this. Mo Yunjue smiled and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Do you want to invite me to join Tiangang's sect? Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged. If you are willing, then it is naturally excellent. They were originally a team representing Tiangang's sect to participate in the assessment. After Yuan Jixin and Yuan Xiaoman joined their team, they had already made up their minds to join Tiangang's sect. This way they would still be able to gather together after the competition ended. Mo Yunjue had a trace of mystery from beginning to end, and he rarely said his own thoughts, so no one knew what he was thinking. Now that the assessment was about to end, it was inevitable to talk about this topic. Mo Yunjue chuckled and then said, I don't intend to join any sect. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be stunned for a moment, and looked at Mo Yun strangely. All along she had only thought that Mo Yunjue had a sect in his heart that he wanted to join, but she had never thought that Mo Yunjue did not intend to join a sect from beginning to end. After all, there were many sects in Xingshan continent. Although Tiangang sect was one of the more famous sects, there were many equally famous sections. However, with her understanding of Mo Yunjue, his words should not be a lie. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind turned thousands of thoughts. Suddenly Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up, and a thought emerged in her mind. Perhaps, Mo Yunjue was originally a sect member, just like Han Xiling was originally a cultivator of Tiangang's sect, but still came to participate in the assessment. Ever since she had known Mo Yunjue, she always felt that Mo Yunjue had an unfathomable feeling. If he was really a cultivator in the sect or if his status was even higher, then all of these could be linked together. Noticing the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Mo Yunjue did not speak. With Bailey Hongzhuang's intelligence, he believed that she would be able to guess something. Bailey Hongzhuang did not ask any more questions after having some guesses in her heart. If Mo Yunjue wanted to say, he would have said it long ago. Since Mo Yunjue did not say much, then she would not ask too much. Because they were friends. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the contract between Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman. Fortunately, the Wind Spirit Tiger was not as abnormal as Baisher. Previously, when she contracted with the White Lion, it gave her a big fright. She believed that everyone would be able to complete the contract smoothly. Chapter 1559. However, Mo Yunjue's gaze suddenly focused on Bailey Hongzhuang. His expression was filled with astonishment and shock. Isn't this the Lan family's exclusive jade pendant? How did it end up in Hongzhuang's hands? Furthermore, Hongzhuang was wearing it in front of her chest. This meant that, at that moment, 1,000 thoughts ran through Mo Yunjue's mind. This was extremely strange. Bailey Hongzhuang felt Mo Yunjue's gaze and couldn't help but turn her head to look at Mo Yunjue suspiciously. She didn't understand why Mo Yunjue was looking at her. However, when she realized that Mo Yunjue was looking at her, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but grab the jade pendant in front of her chest. She had always kept the jade pendant in her clothes but had accidentally revealed it just now. However, Mo Yunjue's astonished gaze was clearly filled with shock and disbelief. Could it be that Mo Yunjue also recognized this jade pendant? Hongzhuang, you're related to the Lan family? Mo Yunjue lowered his voice. Only Bailey Hongzhuang could hear his deep and magnetic voice. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Her expression also changed a little, but she didn't say anything. Until now, only Di Baichen knew about her relationship with the Lan family. This was because her relationship with the Lan family was simply too complicated and involved too deeply. If anyone else knew about this, there could be risks. Thus, she had never told anyone about this until now. However, she never thought that Mo Yunjue would notice it now. Noticing the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Mo Yunjue slowly said, "We've known each other for such a long time. You should believe that I wouldn't do anything that would harm you. If you're still worried, then I won't ask. I'll pretend that I didn't see anything." Mo Yunjue's face rippled with a faint smile as he comforted Bailey Hongzhuang. He never wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to feel any pressure. Just by looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, he could guess that this matter was far from simple. He knew Bailey Hongzhuang's background very well. She was the daughter of the general's household, but in reality, she wasn't General Bailey's biological daughter. As for the rest, he didn't know too much. On one hand, Di Baichen was by Bailey Hongzhuang's side. If he deliberately tried to find out more Bachans, it was very likely that Bachan find out. Moreover, no matter what Bailey Hongzhuang's background was, he only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could live well and didn't intend to get to the bottom of it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue's deep eyes. This was the first time she had seen Mo Yunjue's eyes so clearly after knowing him for so long. Those deep, dark eyes were filled with concern and kindness, magnanimous and clear. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at those eyes. All along, Mo Yunjue had always been wearing a veil of mystery. No one could see through his thoughts. At this moment, Mo Yunjue exposed his thoughts to her for the first time. So magnanimous, without the slightest impurity. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang felt relieved. That's right, Mo Yunjue had always been her good friend. Ever since they met, he had always been helping her. If Mo Yunjue had bad intentions towards her, he wouldn't have waited until now. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel apologetic. Mo Yunjue, I'm sorry. I was too nervous just now. Chapter 1560. Almost in a short period of time, Mo Yunjue had already understood a lot of things. He and Bailey Hongzhuang had known each other for so long, but he had never seen Bailey Hongzhuang reveal such an expression. It could be seen how important this matter was to Bailey Hongzhuang. He believed that Bailey Hongzhuang believed in him, but because this matter was too important, she was so vigilant. Hongzhuang, in fact, the power behind me is not small. If you need me, just tell me and I will do my best to help you. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, and there was a trace of emotion in her heart. Her biggest gain from the assessment was the improvement of her cultivation base, but she also met a group of trustworthy friends. Thank you. Mo Yunjue waved his hand. Between you and me, there is no need to say thank you. He had never wanted to care about a person until Bailey Hongzhuang appeared. As time passed, his interest in Bailey Hongzhuang had changed from the initial interest to a deep love. Even if he knew that there was another very good man in her heart, he was still happy. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally left the cave and embarked on their journey. They had stayed near the cave for a few days, and now there was not much time left for the assessment to end. It was better for them to rush to the last city as soon as possible. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked, and their team had once again grown a bit with 3 new members. Baisher, Xiaohei and Xiaobai had also become friends with the Wind Spirit Tiger in a short period of time. One must know that there were only 8 cultivators in their team, but now there were 6 contract beasts. Once this formation was revealed, many cultivators would be astonished. Xia Jiqing walked beside Bailey Hongzhuang and asked with a smile, "Boss, we have been here for several days. Do you think the cultivators of the 3 dynasties are still waiting for us in front?" Bailey Hongzhuang's bright black eyes turned, and the corners of her mouth curved into a playful smile. "I believe that they are still waiting and have not left." Just from the way the 3 empires were determined to obtain the Wind Spirit Tiger, it was clear that they were obsessed with it. As long as they did not receive any news about the Wind Spirit Tiger, they would not leave. Then what should we do? Xia Jiqing couldn't help but frown. If they met the teams of the 3 dynasties now, wouldn't it be a fierce battle? The 3 Wind Spirit Tigers were still very young, and their battle prowess was not strong. It seemed a little too difficult for them to deal with the teams of 3 large empires by themselves. The cultivators of the 3 dynasties may not all make a move. As long as they know that the Wind Spirit Tiger has been contracted by us, this battle will no longer have any meaning. Mo Yunjue's handsome face was filled with a confident and wise smile. If he guessed correctly, at least the cultivators of the Martial Dynasty would not make a move. Qing Hufeng was a smart person. For something that was useless, he would not do it. On the one hand, it was meaningless, and on the other hand, he would offend an opponent. The biggest feature of the Smiling Tiger was that they could change their expressions in an instant without feeling the slightest disharmony. This was his strength. Chapter 1561. In that case, we only need to deal with the cultivators from the 2 dynasties. Gong Xiaoqing raised his eyebrows slightly. Even if there was one less dynasty team, it would still be troublesome to fight. This was because the other party had more people than them. The total number of people from the 2 teams was 3 times their number. There was still a certain amount of risk in this fierce battle. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "We'll take it one step at a time. There's no need to think too much. Even if we appear, the cultivators from the Cloud Sword Dynasty might not dare to fight." As soon as these words came out, everyone could not help but be stunned for a moment. They did not understand what Bailey Hongzhuang meant by this sentence. The relationship between the Cloud Sword dynasty and the Azure Forest dynasty is probably not good. The reason they can form an alliance is because of the famous Martial dynasty. Once the Martial dynasty leaves, the alliance between the Cloud Sword dynasty and the Azure Forest dynasty will naturally cease to exist. There is no trust between the two dynasties' teams. When they fight, they have to be wary of whether the other party will plot against them. Therefore they might not make a move. Mo Yunjua's eyes flashed with a wise light. This situation was not complicated. He was very familiar with the grudges between the Azure Forest dynasty and the famed Sword dynasty. It was precisely because of this that he and Bailey Hongzhuang were so calm. Because they must have calculated everything. Following Mo Yunjua's words, Jiqing and the others finally reacted. Their faces were filled with a touch of admiration. This situation was something they had never thought of before. They did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjua to be so meticulous. In comparison, the gap between the two of them was really huge. After confirming this point, the worry on the faces of the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty completely disappeared. The cultivators from the three dynasties had been waiting in the city. However, several days had passed, and they still did not receive any news about the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty. This really made them depressed. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Perhaps they went directly to the city in front of them? For a moment, the cultivators from the three dynasties were not sure what to do. In fact, they even had plans to head to the next city. After all, they couldn't just stay here forever. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were not far from the city. Hence, they arrived at the city before noon. Fang Wenqing was cultivating in his room. In fact, he hadn't been able to calm down and cultivate for the past few days. His whole heart was on the Wind Spirit Tiger. At this moment, a series of hurried footsteps sounded outside his door, followed by a surprised voice that entered the room. Captain, Tiangang dynasty's cultivators have appeared. The cultivators from Cloud Sword dynasty and Martial dynasty have already gone to see it. You better hurry up. Hearing this, Fang Wenqing immediately jumped down from the bed and quickly opened the door. Without hesitation, he rushed to the place where Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were. No matter what, he could not be slower than the cultivators of the other two dynasties. At the same time, Qing Hufeng and Yu Junfei were also running. After waiting for so long, they finally got news of the Tiangang dynasty cultivators. Now, they wanted to see how the Tiangang dynasty cultivators were going to run. Chapter 1562. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had just entered the city when they realized that many cultivators in the city were looking at them in astonishment. Aren't those the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty? They actually dare to swagger into the city? The cultivators from the three dynasties are waiting for them. Won't they be caught by the cultivators from the three dynasties? Are the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty crazy or something? They are really fearless. In an instant, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest in disbelief. This was really too strange. If it was any other team that encountered such a situation, they would have run away quickly. Who would be like the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty who would throw themselves at the muzzle of the gun? Everyone looked at them curiously, wanting to know how the show would unfold. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest understood when they felt the crowd's gaze. It seemed that everyone already knew about this news. When the crowd saw the 6 contracted beasts walking side by side behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, they were completely dumbfounded. Fuck, the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty are really heaven-defying. There are only 8 people in a team and they actually have 6 contracted beasts? We are a team from a large dynasty but we don't even have a single contracted beast. They are just a middle-sized dynasty and they actually have 6 contracted beasts. I heard that the cultivators from the 3 dynasties have been looking for them because they snatched the 3 Wind Spirit Tiger cubs. Now it seems that the rumors are true. They have already snatched the cubs and they are still swaggering here. Don't tell me they want to return the cubs to the 3 dynasties? The crowd looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest in astonishment. They simply could not understand. Very quickly, Fang Wenqing, Yu Junfei, and Qing Hufeng led the cultivators from their respective dynasties and rushed over. When they saw the 3 Wind Spirit Tiger cubs behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, their eyes lit up with excitement. Bailey Hongzhuang, your courage really isn't small. You actually dared to enter the city so openly. Fang Wenqing sneered. He did not care whether Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were crazy or not. He only needed to snatch the cubs back. Bailey Hongzhuang's exquisite face was filled with astonishment. Puzzled, she asked, "Young Master Fang, what do you mean by that?" Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was still going to argue with him, Fang Wenqing went straight to the point. Now obediently hand over the cubs and I can let you guys have a quick death. When he said that, the faces of the people's faces darkened. Fang Wenqing's words were really disgusting. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled, looking at Fang Wenqing with eyes that were cold and murderous. Fang Wenqing, you really think you're some big shot, ah? Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? Xiao He and Xiao Bai had already jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. The two little guys' eyes were also filled with anger. This Fang Wenqing is really annoying. If I don't kill him, I won't be able to get rid of the hatred in my heart. Xiao He's face was filled with anger. There were all kinds of birds in the forest. This Fang Wenqing was born with a face that deserved a beating. If he was not taught a lesson, he would not be able to take it lying down. Chapter 1563. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang dared to mock him, Fang Wenqing was stunned for a moment. He was so angry that he laughed. Bailey Hongzhuang, you are quite brave. Thank you for the compliment. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I have always been brave. Cheng Huffing's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He still had a warm smile on his face. Miss Bailey, as long as you hand over the Wind Spirit Tiger, we cultivators from the Martial Dynasty will leave. What do you think? Cheng Huffing was different from Fang Wenqing. After the previous encounter, he understood that the Tiangang dynasty could rely on a middle-sized dynasty team to make a name for themselves in the assessment competition. It was not just luck. At least, the other party was able to make them be chased by so many demonic beasts last time. Just this method alone was very impressive. If possible, he did not want to offend such a capable opponent. Seeing that Cheng Huffing's words were different from his, Fang Wenqing's expression changed. Wasn't this the same as undermining him in front of his face? Yu Junfei's thoughts were the same as Cheng Huffing's. He continued, Miss Bailey, Cheng Huffing is right. As long as you hand over the Wind Spirit Tiger, we will pretend that nothing happened. What do you think? Bailey Hongzhuang listened to Cheng Huffing and Yu Junfei's words. She then looked at Fang Wenqing with a cold smile. The provocation and ridicule in her eyes were obvious. Fang Wenqing's expression turned ugly. He wanted to make things difficult for Cheng Huffing and Yu Junfei, but he also understood that he was not qualified to do so. The cultivators in the city looked at the confrontation between the cultivators from the four dynasties and their expressions became interesting. It seemed that this was a good show that could not be missed. Some of the teams that had formed an alliance with the Tiangang dynasty were watching from the side. They also wanted the Wind Spirit Tiger, but after the cultivators from the three dynasties appeared, they no longer had any chance. Therefore they could only watch the show. The cultivators from the three dynasties are all here. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty have no way out. I'm afraid they can only give the Wind Spirit Tiger away. If I were them, I wouldn't have come to the city. Isn't this courting death? In my opinion, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty must know that they can't escape the pursuit of the three dynasties, so they decided to call the Wind Spirit Tiger out. Otherwise, being chased by the teams of the three great dynasties at all times isn't a good thing. Almost all the cultivators present suddenly felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were only doing this because they had compromised. In fact, there were many cultivators who chose to compromise in this assessment every day. Nothing was more important than one's life. Therefore, such a compromise would not attract the disdain of other cultivators. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's next words made all the cultivators freeze in place. I'm really sorry, but we've already made a contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger. Even if we give them to you, they won't be of any use. Bailey Hongzhuang's elegant and charming face had an elegant and charming smile. Her eyes were apologetic and her voice was light and pleasant. However, this voice was not what the cultivators from the three dynasties wanted to hear. All the cultivators present looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. The possibility of this happening was close to zero. Chapter 1564. Damn, Bailey Hongzhuang, what kind of joke is this? How is it possible to form a contract with a demonic beast in this assessment? There's no ceiling master here. Even if you want to find a reason, you should find a more reliable one. No one will believe this kind of reason. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. The probability of this kind of thing happening was like a fantasy story. It was simply impossible. Cheng Hifeng glanced at the surrounding cultivators, then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Lady Bailey, you've seen it yourself. No one will believe it. Compared to Cheng Hifeng's faint smile, indifferent and warm appearance, Yu Junfei and Fang Wenqing's faces had already darkened. From their point of view, Bailey Hongzhuang was making up a lie that was impossible to deceive them. Only a person with a good temper like Qing Hifeng would talk nicely with Bailey Hongzhuang. If it was them, they would have already made a move. Looking at Qing Hifeng's calm appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with admiration. It had to be said that this Qing Hifeng was truly an extraordinary person. Just his bearing alone was not something an ordinary person could compare to. At least, Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei could not compare to him in this aspect. Although a smiling tiger made people wary, it also made people admire him. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly, her expression was somewhat regretful. It's a pity that what I said was true. When these words came out, Qing Hifeng's brows could not help but furrow, but they quickly relaxed. Lady Bailey, I've already said it. If you continue to evade, then there's no meaning. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Qing Gongzi, I understand what you're saying. With your intelligence, I will not have the thought of deceiving you. Moreover, this kind of lie has no meaning. Could it be that Qing Gongzi thinks that I would make up such an inferior lie? Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Qing Hifeng's expression slightly changed. Previously he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was lying. But now he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't lying. Because Bailey Hongzhuang was too calm and confident. Qing Hifeng narrowed his eyes. This was the second time he had come into contact with Bailey Hongzhuang. The last time he met Bailey Hongzhuang, he did not say much and did not know much about her. However, after today's exchange, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was quite a character. At the very least, her brain was much better than Fang Wenqing's. If what Miss Bailey said is true, then do you mind showing it to us? Qing Hifeng asked with a smile. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, there was no point in making up a lie about this kind of thing. As long as they checked, they would know the result. However, before Bailey Hongzhuang could say anything, Fang Wenqing's voice rang out. What's the point of talking to her? As long as we kill them, won't this contracted beast be ours? Fang Wenqing looked at Qing Hifeng in confusion. He only felt that Qing Hifeng's actions were completely unnecessary. Looking at Fang Wenqing's anxious appearance, Qing Hifeng could not help but frown. Cooperating with this kind of person would really damage his reputation. If Fang Wenqing's cultivation talent was not strong enough, this kind of idiot could only be cannon fodder. Chapter 1565. Qing Hifeng glanced at Fang Wenqing speechlessly, but he ignored Fang Wenqing's words. Miss Bailey, as long as you can prove that you have really contracted with the Wind Spirit Tiger, then the cultivators of the Wu dynasty will leave directly and no longer participate in anything. How about it? If it wasn't for the Wind Spirit Tiger, he didn't want to be enemies with the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. He had a hunch that the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were not easy to deal with. Every dark horse had its own luck. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had come all the way here, and all their opponents had ended up in a bad situation. Once some people's luck came, no matter who they were, they would not have a good end. If the Wind Spirit Tiger really had no hope, then he didn't need to spend energy to be enemies with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Listening to Qing Hifeng's words, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had some joy in their eyes. It seemed that the judgment of Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue was really not wrong. Qing Hifeng's decision was the same as what they had guessed. Fang Wenqing looked at Qing Hifeng puzzledly. He didn't understand why Qing Hifeng was doing this. As long as they made a move, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty could only kowtow and beg for mercy. Why did they have to wait for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to show off? Wasn't this a waste of time? Okay. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips evoked a faint smile. In the next moment, she waved her hand, and Xia Jiqing, Bai Junyu, and Yuan Xiaoman walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. The three people were holding their contract beasts in their hands. Since Qing Hifeng wanted to witness it, they didn't mind letting him see it. The eyes of all the cultivators present were attracted. They wanted to know what the result would be. Although in their opinion this was simply an impossible thing, but Bailey Hongzhuang was so confident that they couldn't help but have some doubts. Qing Hifeng stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. From beginning to end, he had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was always calm, and no one could find a trace of a problem. Looking at the Wind Spirit Tiger held by Xia Jiqing and the others, Qing Hifeng took a closer look, and his face suddenly changed. A wisp of shock climbed onto his smiling face, and it was filled with dense disbelief and doubt. How was this possible? Qing Hifeng only suspected that he had seen it wrong. However, no matter how he looked at it, the truth reminded him that he was not mistaken. Everything was real. After a long while, Qing Hifeng recovered from his shock and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. At this moment he finally understood why he had a bad premonition in his heart. It turned out that this was the reason. He had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would be able to complete the contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger before the end of the assessment. He suddenly realized why Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had been missing these days. They must have gone to contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger. Now that they had appeared in the city, it was because they knew that no one could take the Wind Spirit Tiger away. Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei didn't care at all. Even if they used their toes to think, they knew that it was impossible. However, after seeing the sudden change in Cheng Hifeng's face, they were also a little surprised. Could it be that what Bailey Hongzhuang said was true? Chapter 1566. With this look, Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei were dumbfounded. They must have seen wrongly, right? Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei had the same thought in their minds. After taking a closer look, they saw each other's shocked eyes and were sure that they did not see wrongly. This was simply impossible. Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei couldn't help but think, this shouldn't be a trick deliberately used by the Tiangang dynasty, right? However, the fluctuation of the contract was very obvious, and it was not something that could be disguised. What kind of joke was this? The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had only disappeared for a few days, and they had already completed the contract. What kind of efficiency was this? The most important thing was, where did the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty find a sealing master? Sealing masters had always been a rare existence, and only young cultivators appeared in the assessment competition. It was impossible for a sealing master to appear. How did the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty do it? Just looking at the expressions of the captains of the three dynasties, the cultivators present guessed the real situation, and their hearts were also shocked. My God, it can't be true, right? Didn't you see that Cheng Hufeng and the others are silent? It must be true, otherwise they would not have such an expression. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty are really amazing. They can contract with monsters in this assessment competition. In addition to them, I really can't find such an example in the other dynasties. Just like how they had been in the small world for almost 2 years, they had been looking for monster cubs. However, even if they found a monster cub, they could not successfully contract it. On the contrary, it could be robbed by other cultivators along the way. Therefore, many cultivators could only give up this idea. Although the contract beast was important, their life was more important. They absolutely could not let the contract beast affect them. Fang Wenqing did not know what to say at this moment. The things that the Tiangang dynasty did really made people speechless. Young Master Cheng, you have seen it? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was still indifferent, and there was a trace of a smile. The eyes of Xia Jiqing and the others were filled with vigilance. If the other party wanted to make a move, they would be ready to make a move first. Cheng Hufeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement, then smiled and said, I believe you. You have good means. I will not participate in this matter. Thank you. Cheng Hufeng looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and asked again, Miss Bailey, there is something this one does not understand and would like to ask for your guidance. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Young Master Cheng, please speak. May I know where you found a sealing master? Even someone as smart as Cheng Hufeng couldn't figure out how Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did it. Even if he obtained the Wind Spirit Tiger, he could not guarantee that he would be able to find a sealing master to help him seal it. As everyone knew, the price of hiring a sealing master to seal a demonic beast was not small. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty could do it so easily. They had sealed 3 demonic beasts in one go. Moreover, they had sealed all of them successfully. This was too shocking. Following Cheng Hifeng's words, Fang Wenqing, Yu Junfei and the others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang curiously. They couldn't understand this result either. The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a bright arc, and her voice was light and pleasant to the ear. Chapter 1567. As soon as he said that, all the cultivators present were completely dumbfounded. All eyes were focused on Bailey Hongzhuang, and they were filled with disbelief. Bailey Hongzhuang is a sealing master? Is this possible? Are you sure you're not joking? Everyone was stupefied. How rare was a sealing master? Which sealing master didn't have countless cultivators seeking an audience with them? However, a sealing master was standing in front of them now. Moreover, it was a cultivator who was the same age as them or even younger. For a moment, the atmosphere seemed to have frozen. Everyone opened their mouths wide, but they didn't know what to say. This kind of thing was even more unbelievable than the previous things. Cheng Hifeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang calmly. He saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were clear, and she didn't seem to be lying at all. I understand. Cheng Hifeng smiled faintly. He didn't doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's words. In fact, in this assessment competition, other than their team having a sealing master, there was almost no other possibility. No sealing master would spend so much effort to help someone contract 3 demonic beasts in such an environment. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had already created many miracles along the way. It didn't seem so unbelievable to create another miracle now. At least this person was Bailey Hongzhuang. Compared to the cultivators of other dynasties, this person was more trustworthy. If Cheng Hifeng was still hesitating whether he should leave like this before, now he was incomparably certain of his thoughts. Such a young sealing master, her future could be said to be boundless. Until now, they still didn't know which dynasty the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were from. However, just from Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as a sealing master, he could determine that the power behind Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't small. Under such circumstances, not offending Bailey Hongzhuang was a very wise decision. I always do what I say. Cheng Hifeng still smiled. He waved his hand and said to the cultivators behind him, "Let's go." The Martial Empire's cultivator did not hesitate after hearing Cheng Hifeng's words. There had never been any problems with the captain's decisions. When Fang Wenqing saw that Cheng Hifeng was about to leave, he couldn't help but ask, "Cheng Hifeng, you're leaving just like that?" Cheng Hifeng glanced at Fang Wenqing and said, "Now that things have come to this, what's the point of staying?" He wasn't a narrow-minded person like Fang Wenqing, and he didn't take the previous grudge to heart. In the next instant Cheng Hifeng left. Seeing the Martial Empire's cultivator leave just like that, the crowd of cultivators present were all astonished. They hadn't expected the Martial dynasty's cultivators to be so efficient, but they still had a good impression of them. Seeing Cheng Hifeng leave just like that, Fang Wenqing's expression became unsightly. He was filled with hatred towards the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. The Wind Spirit Tiger was supposed to belong to them. Now that someone else had contracted it, he had completely lost all hope. However, he couldn't let this matter go just like that. This was intolerable. The Tiangang dynasty's cultivators were simply relying on the sealing master to trick them. If they left without paying attention to anything, wouldn't they be seen as a joke by other cultivators? Chapter 1568. Thinking of this, Fang Wenqing directly looked at Yu Junfei and said, "What do you plan to do?" Yu Junfei's mood was also very complicated. He never thought that something like this would happen. Now there were only 2 choices, either leave or fight. Yu Junfei looked at Fang Wenqing beside him. Their relationship had always been bad. If they joined forces to deal with the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, wouldn't it be an even bigger joke? "We're leaving too." Yu Junfei waved his hand. Since the cultivators of the Martial dynasty took the lead, then they did not need to care about the rumors. At least it was better than continuing to stay with people like Fang Wenqing. Soon, the cultivators of the Cloud Sword dynasty also left, leaving only the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty and the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty confronting each other. I didn't expect the cultivators of the Martial dynasty and Cloud Sword dynasty to leave just like that. Aren't the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty a little too lucky? If this happened to us, I think the cultivators of the 3 dynasties will definitely not let us go. Now that they actually left just like that, it's really strange. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty have always been very lucky. They dared to swagger into the city because they have nothing to fear. For a moment, everyone only envied the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. Fang Wenqing could not help but ridicule after seeing Yu Junfei leave. They were all useless people. Even if he could not obtain the Wind Spirit Tiger, he would not let the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty off so easily. After seeing the cultivators of the 2 dynasties leave, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others shifted their gazes to Fang Wenqing. In the next moment, under everyone's astonished gazes, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others directly took out their weapons. This scene was completely within their calculations. As long as the cultivators of the 2 dynasties left, they would attack the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty. The strength of a large dynasty's team was indeed powerful, but it was not like they had never encountered them before. This Fang Wenqing had repeatedly caused trouble for them, and they also had a sense of anger in their hearts. Now it was time to personally deal with all of this. After seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The actions of the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were really not something that ordinary people could do. They actually dared to take the initiative to declare war on the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty? Fang Wenqing was also stunned. He did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others actually dared to provoke him first. Was really funny. I really didn't expect you guys to be so bold. Fang Wenqing sneered. You're unhappy, I want your head. Mo Yunjue's voice was cold. He had long been itching to beat up this kind of noisy fellow. Fang Wenqing's words, Fang Wenqing's Fang Wenqing's Fang. He remembered that it was Mo Yunjue who had blocked his palm. Mo Yunjue's strength was also very strong. Kill the cultivators of the Azure Forest Dynasty. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand, and the lapis lazuli sword instantly appeared in her hand. She had already seen through Fang Wenqing's narrow-mindedness. Even if they did not declare war, Fang Wenqing would still cause trouble for them. It was better to be simple and directly attack. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were already prepared. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's order, everyone directly charged towards the cultivators of the Azure Forest Dynasty. Chapter 1569. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest did not say much. The Azure Forest Dynasty's team originally had 12 cultivators, but one of them died when they were being chased by the demonic beasts. Now there were only 11 cultivators left. The Tiangang Dynasty's team had a total of 8 cultivators. Including Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi, it was a one-on-one battle. As for the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers, they were still too young, so they could not participate in the battle. Mo Yunjue went up against Fang Wenqing, and Bailey Hongzhuang went up against another cultivator. Ever since their strength broke through, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest rarely had conflicts with cultivators from other dynasties. Now that they were going to fight again, not only were they not worried at all, but they were also very excited. As long as they dealt with the Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators, they believed that their points would skyrocket again. The assessment competition was about to end, and everyone was originally very worried about the problem of points. Now that the Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators were going to throw themselves at the muzzle of the gun, they naturally had to seize the opportunity. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, but Fang Wenqing and the rest also had the same thought. Now they only hoped to get better and better points. Although as long as a cultivator was on the top 100 list, they could join the sect, but everyone knew that the higher their ranking, the higher their treatment and status in the sect would be. No matter when, the treatment of outstanding people was different from ordinary people. They're fighting just like that? The Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators are really not ordinary domineering. The Azure Forest Dynasty is a very famous large dynasty, and the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators dare to attack without saying anything. This kind of courage is really unparalleled. Who do you think will win and who lose in the end? Is there even a need to say? How powerful are the Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators? The Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators will definitely win this battle. I don't think so. The Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators are also very powerful. Everyone says that they are the dark horse of this assessment competition. The cultivators had different opinions. They just watched the two teams fight in full swing, and there were even people who bet on the outcome of this battle. After Fang Wenqing and Mo Yunjue exchanged blows, his expression changed. The previous collision in the forest was only a punch, so he did not have a deep feeling. Now that they had exchanged blows, he realized that Mo Yunjue's strength was really not ordinary. Not only was his strength not weaker than him, he might even be stronger than him. After understanding this point, Fang Wenqing's face became gloomy. He couldn't understand why Mo Yunjue was so strong when he was just a cultivator from a small empire. At the same time, he noticed the battle between the other cultivators. Such terrifying combat strength would be considered extraordinary even in a large empire's team, yet they were actually from a small empire? Or were they? However, the current situation did not allow Fang Wenqing to think about this at all. Mo Yunjue's attack had already arrived. Bailey Hongzhuang did not hold back when she attacked. There were so many cultivators watching here. If she did not settle it cleanly, it would undoubtedly cause more trouble. Chapter 1570. Captain, looks like this Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators are very powerful. A cultivator from the Martial Dynasty could not help but say. Cheng Hufeng looked at the scene in the distance indifferently and said, their strength is indeed very strong. Their background should not be simple either. He had already noticed earlier that not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but Mo Yunjue's strength was also very strong. However, Mo Yunjue clearly did not like to talk, so he had always remained silent. Even so, he was still able to determine that Mo Yunjue's strength was not simple from his posture and expression. This was because Mo Yunjue had always been standing in a defensive posture. Once someone launched a sneak attack, he would definitely attack with the fastest speed. Just this point alone was enough to prove that Mo Yunjue was an expert. He had never believed in the existence of luck in this world. There was only one reason why a small dynasty's team could come so far. Their strength was strong enough. The Azure Forest dynasty's cultivators seemed to have fallen into a disadvantage. A cultivator said in surprise. He had never thought that the Azure Forest dynasty's people would actually fall into a disadvantage. Qing Hufeng laughed lightly. With Fang Wenqing's character, he's destined to be unlucky. They'll definitely lose this round. Let's go. As his voice fell, Qing Hufeng no longer looked at the situation behind him and directly walked towards the next city. They had already stayed here for quite some time. It was time to leave. Hearing Qing Hufeng's words, the Martial Dynasty's cultivators were extremely impressed by Qing Hufeng. They had never thought that the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators would be so powerful to actually be able to defeat the Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators. Their captain's eyesight was still impressive. After Yu Junfei led the team of cultivators away, he stood not far away and sized up the Azure Forest Dynasty's movements. However, he did not think that the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators would make the first move. From the looks of it, it was not that Fang Wenqing did not want to let Bailey Hongzhuang and the others go, but that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not want to let Fang Wenqing go. After knowing this, Yu Junfei wasn't in a hurry to leave. He wanted to know where the cultivators from the Tiangang Dynasty got their courage from. Looking at the situation of this exchange of blows, Yu Junfei was dumbfounded too. Why did this Great Dipper Dynasty's cultivators seem to be injected with stimulants when fighting? Fang Wenqing was clearly not Mo Yunjue's match from the way he was retreating. Not only Mo Yunjue, but the other cultivators of the Great Dipper Dynasty were also very shocking. This was too shocking. If this continued, the decline of the Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators was only a matter of time. After all, with the Azure Forest Dynasty's strength, even if they went against the Azure Forest Dynasty, they might not be able to guarantee a 100% victory. The Great Dipper Dynasty was merely a small dynasty, but its combat strength was actually so powerful. Most importantly, the combat strength of the three contracted beasts was also so strong. Wasn't this too abnormal? At this moment, Yu Junfei suddenly realized how wise his decision to leave was. Since he was unable to deal with the Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators all along, having the Great Dipper Dynasty's cultivators to help them deal with this trouble was also a good thing. The Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivators were completely annihilated. In this way, their dynasty could defeat the Azure Forest Dynasty this time. How arrogant was Fang Wenqing normally? He would never have thought that he would have such a day. Chapter 1571. The cultivators in the city were dumbfounded. No one had expected the cultivators from the Tiangang Dynasty to be so powerful. Some of the cultivators who had the same idea of snatching the Wind Spirit Tigers were glad that they did not make a move earlier. Otherwise, wouldn't they be looking for trouble? The cultivators from the Tiangang Dynasty are too powerful. Even the cultivators from the Azure Forest Dynasty are no match for them. The combat power of the Tiangang Dynasty is no longer in the category of a medium-sized dynasty. This is clearly a strength that only a large dynasty can have. The cultivators from the Wu Dynasty and the Cloud Sword Dynasty are really wise to leave so easily. I didn't understand before, but now I do. Among the three dynasties, the cultivators from the Azure Forest Dynasty are the most annoying. There are countless cultivators who are unhappy with Fang Wenqing. Now that the cultivators from the Tiangang Dynasty have taken care of him, many cultivators are cheering in their hearts. The crowd watched the battle in front of them. There was no suspense about the outcome of the battle now. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' combat power was amazing. The three contract beasts were even more agile. They did not give the opponent any chance at all. Even the three Wind Spirit Tigers were quietly watching the show at the side. The crowd was speechless at such a scene. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang knocked down the cultivator in front of her. Her long sword directly pierced into the opponent's body. The azure glaze sword was pulled out. It was crisp and clean. The azure glaze sword was like a work of art. It was not stained with the slightest bit of blood. Bailey Hongzhuang directly took the opponent's Chengquan bag and transferred the opponent's points to herself. Looking at the skyrocketing points, a hint of a smile appeared in her ink-black phoenix eyes. If her judgment was correct, she now had a lot of points. It would not be a problem for her to be on the top 100 list. After Bailey Hongzhuang took care of her opponent, she did not continue to attack. Instead, she waited on the other side not far away. She believed that with everyone's strength, they could take care of their opponents. When the onlookers saw Bailey Hongzhuang standing on the side, their expressions couldn't help but change a bit. They knew that it was not because Bailey Hongzhuang did not want to help her opponents, but because she had absolute confidence in her teammates. This kind of confidence was something that not many cultivators in the entire assessment competition possessed. The golden sunlight shone on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Her white figure was even more graceful and moving. Her delicate face had a smile that could topple a city. It was shallow, but it made people think about it deeply. Bang! Mo Yunjue sent Fang Wenqing flying with a single palm strike. His handsome face was filled with indifference. Even though the sun was shining brightly, everyone still felt a trace of coldness when they saw Mo Yunjue, which made them feel surprised. Fang Wenqing's complexion became deathly pale. He had never thought that he would be defeated at the hands of a Great Dipper Dynasty cultivator. This black-clothed fellow in front of him was extremely powerful, and he was completely unable to determine Mo Yunjue's depth. From the beginning to the end, Mo Yunjue had not used his full strength when dealing with him. Every time he risked his life to increase his strength, he would realize that Mo Yunjue's strength had also increased. He was strong, but his opponent was stronger. This feeling almost caused him to break down. Chapter 1572. Mo Yunjue slowly walked towards Fang Wenqing. Fang Wenqing looked at the approaching Mo Yunjue and could not help but crawl back. At this moment, he was already regretting offending the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. If he could have left together with the cultivators of the Wu dynasty and the Cloud Sword dynasty, they would not have ended up like this. The assessment was about to end, but he was going to die here. A shadow covered Fang Wenqing, and Mo Yunjue had already walked in front of him. "I beg you, don't kill me." At this moment, Fang Wenqing could no longer care about his face. He only hoped that Mo Yunjue would let him go. As long as he got out of the assessment safely, he still had a good future. Looking at Fang Wenqing, who was begging for mercy, Mo Yunjue's eyes were cold. His expression did not change at all, and there was not the slightest ripple in his black pupils. Unfortunately, it's too late. In the next moment, Mo Yunjue stabbed the sword into Fang Wenqing's body. For such a hateful guy like Fang Wenqing, he would not hesitate for a moment. After seeing Mo Yunjue act so decisively, everyone's expression changed again. The news they had received before was really correct. Never offend the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. They were not soft-hearted people. After Mo Yunjue took the points and the Qingquan bag, he walked back to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His handsome face did not have the slightest expression. He just stood there indifferently like Bailey Hongzhuang, waiting for the others to finish their battle. Now that the strength of the cultivators in their team had been improved, even if they encountered cultivators from large dynasties, they did not need to worry. Therefore, they would not participate in the battle of others. Everyone needed a chance to fight. After seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue had finished their battle, Xia Jiqing could not help but say, "Boss, they have finished, we can't fall behind too much." As Xia Jiqing's voice fell, Gong Shaoqing and the others' eyes changed, and their attacks became more and more fierce. Their goal now was to shorten the distance between them and Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. The feeling of being left behind every time was not a good feeling. Boom. Yuan Jixin finished the battle and smiled, "I'm third, you lost." Gong Shaoqing and Dongfang Yu finished their battle almost at the same time. After seeing that Yuan Jixin had finished, Dongfang's eyes had a look of dissatisfaction. "Damn, I'm a few seconds slower than you again." Everyone was completely speechless when they saw the Tiangang dynasty's cultivators ending the battle so easily and even having an internal competition. This was a battle of life and death. You actually treated it as a game? His guts were really big. Facing such cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty, the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. This was the atmosphere's Tians? It had to be said that this kind of feeling was really enviable. The three beasties had returned to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. This time it was Yuan Xiaoman and Xia Jiqing again. For this point, Yuan Xiaoman and Xia Jiqing were also speechless to the extreme. "I'm not convinced, let's fight again next time," Xia Jiqing said angrily. "I'm not convinced, let's find another opponent." Yuan Xiaoman followed. As soon as these words came out, the onlookers had already returned to the house. This was really the fun of the strong. Chapter 1573. After dealing with the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked into the city and found a house and went in. The cultivators looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who walked into the house so indifferently, and their hearts were filled with emotion. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others quickly divided the points and found that Fang Wenqing's points were much higher than the points of the other cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty. This Fang Wenqing is clearly a despicable and selfish fellow. Who knows, he might have taken the points of his teammates and transferred them to himself. Xia Jiqing's eyes were filled with disgust. When she thought of Fang Wenqing, she couldn't help but feel disgusted. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. As Xia Jiqing said, all of this was very possible. Everyone has been in the wild for the past few days. I think you must be tired. Let's rest in the city today and continue tomorrow. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded. They really needed to familiarize themselves and wash away the dust on their bodies. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the house. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, Bai Shi, and the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers had gone to another room to take a bath. Since the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers joined, Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi had put on the attitude of a senior to teach the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also smiled faintly and followed them. There were more topics to talk about between beasts. Now that so many contract beasts were together, it was a very happy thing. After Bailey Hongzhuang washed up, she entered the state of cultivation. These days she had been vigilant outside. Now that she relaxed, she felt a lot more comfortable. She originally planned to go to the desert world to cultivate today, but the 3 beasts were not in the house now, so she simply cultivated by herself. After sealing the 3 demonic beast eggs, she had used up quite a bit of her mental strength. Mental energy was different from essence energy and could be fully recovered very quickly. It would still take a few days to completely recover. She would rest well for the next few days. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others dealt with the cultivators from the Azure Forest dynasty, the name of the Tiangang dynasty once again resounded throughout the examination competition. Even if the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty had once defeated the cultivators of the large dynasties, the teams of those large dynasties were unable to compare with the Azure Forest dynasty. Thus, the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty had undoubtedly become the famous stepping stone of the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty. For a time, all the cultivators treated the Tiangang dynasty as an extremely powerful large-scale dynasty team. Even the Mingwu dynasty and the Cloud Sword dynasty did not want to be enemies with them, which showed how powerful the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others once again set foot on the road to the next city. However, along the way they could clearly feel that the other cultivators were looking at them differently. Look, that's a cultivator from the Tiangang dynasty. I heard that Fang Wenqing died at their hands. Isn't that so? This news has already spread. Speak softly, don't let them hear you. Otherwise, you might have to accompany the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty in hell. Chapter 1574. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also changed a bit. What the hell, are they afraid of us? Xia Jiqing stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, wondering if she had heard wrongly before. Bai Junyu nodded slightly. Yes, they are afraid of us. The next moment, Xia Jiqing's face suddenly filled with a proud smile. Along the way we were worried about how strong our opponents were, but now there are cultivators who are afraid of us. Does this count as a huge breakthrough? Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Dongfang Yu couldn't help but chuckle. If you think so, then so be it. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips were slightly raised, and she also felt that the situation was very funny. I didn't expect the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty to have such ability. It seems that there shouldn't be anyone who will trouble us when we reach the end of the road. Needless to say, it was because they had killed the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty, so everyone showed such an expression. After all, such a situation had never happened before. Our next journey will be very smooth, Mo Yunjue said with a smile. In the face of the fear of other cultivators, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't care at all. In fact, only the strong could enjoy such a gaze. They had gone from trembling in fear in the assessment competition to being so open and not being afraid of anyone. It was really a great improvement. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were leading the 3 Wind Spirit Tigers behind everyone at the moment. The 6 little guys walking together were particularly eye-catching. Time passed quickly, and with the improvement of the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, there were no more cultivators who went to trouble them. Under such circumstances, everyone only felt that time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was already the day when the assessment competition was about to end. The central city. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the central city, they saw a sea of people. The central city was several times larger than any of the cities they had seen before. Even though there was a sea of people, they could all live in this city. This was the place where the assessment competition ended. Tomorrow would be the end of the competition. On the day before the assessment competition ended, the cultivators in the central city all had different expressions on their faces. Some were happy and some were worried. He had left his hometown for 2 years in order to obtain good results in the assessment competition and become a member of the sect. The cultivators who had accumulated enough points were naturally overjoyed, because their 2 years of hard work had finally yielded the results they had been looking forward to the most. However, the cultivators with low points were very worried. Back then they had come in high spirits, but now they returned to the dynasty dejectedly. When they thought of all this, they could not help but feel worried. As for those cultivators with average points, they were seizing the last day to snatch points. As long as they could snatch points today, they would have a chance of success. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked into the central city, many pairs of eyes fell on them. 8 cultivators and 6 contracted beasts. Just this point alone was enough to make them unique and hard to forget. Chapter 1575. We've arrived at the central city. Xia Jiqing looked at the sea of people in front of her, and her pretty face couldn't help but be filled with a thick excitement. They hadn't been in a hurry all the way, and they had just arrived at the central city the day before the end of the assessment. The assessment is finally coming to an end. I've been looking at the same scenery in the small world for so long, and I'm getting tired of it. Yuan Xiaoman was also excited. Fortunately, they had survived until now, and she now wanted to return to the snow country. She was accustomed to the coldness of the snow country, and only felt that the heat in the small world was unbearable. We're finally leaving. Even Gong Shaoqing, who had always been indifferent, had a look of emotion in his eyes at this moment. They had been living in the Xingxian continent before, so they didn't feel much about it. It was only after they left that they realized how much they missed it. We're finally here. Bailey Hongzhuang's dark phoenix eyes were filled with joy, and the corners of her mouth opened into an elegant smile. 2 years had finally passed, and as long as she waited until tomorrow, she would be able to see Di Beichen. Chapter 1576. The central city was different from the cities in the Xingxian continent. There was no fun place here. Except for a group of cultivators gathering here, there was nothing special. Bailey Hongzhuang followed Xia Jiqing and the others for a stroll before returning to the house. Only after the results of the assessment were out, would they be able to truly relax when they returned to the Xingxian continent. Xiaohei, Xiaobai, and Baisher had already gone to play with the wind spirit tiger at this moment. Speaking of which, the relationship between these 6 beasts was very good. Having not slept for a long time, Bailey Hongzhuang was ready to have a good sleep tonight and relax. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to rest, suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Hearing the knock on the door, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly and immediately opened the door. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the cultivator outside the door, her face could not help but show a touch of surprise. Mo Yunjue? For a long time, the people who knocked on their door were either Xia Jiqing or Yuan Xiaoman. She did not expect that Mo Yunjue would actually come to her today, which really surprised her. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Mo Yunjue chuckled. Surprised? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, a little. Can I come in? Bailey Hongzhuang took a step back and smiled, of course. Mo Yunjue's smile widened a little as he walked into the house and sat at the table. Bailey Hongzhuang poured a cup of tea for Mo Yunjue and handed it to him. After being together for so long, this is the first time you have come to me. Do you want me to come to you a few more times? Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows and smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang wrinkled her nose and just smiled at Mo Yunjue, but did not answer. Well, I won't joke anymore. Mo Yunjue spread his hands. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang only had Di Beichen in her heart, so such a joke was not suitable for her. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, but in her heart, she was guessing why Mo Yunjue came to her. Let me have a look at your point card. Mo Yunjue suddenly said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue with a slightly surprised look, and then handed her points card to Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue looked at the number on Bailey Hongzhuang's points card and said, You have a lot of points, so it won't be a problem for you to be in the top 100. However, if you want to be first in the top 100, I'm afraid it will be a little difficult. He knew very well that Bailey Hongzhuang had taken care of her teammates a lot of the time. If it was only Bailey Hongzhuang alone, her points would be much higher. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was calm and indifferent. She said lightly, As long as I can be in the top 100 and have good results, it's fine. It doesn't matter if I'm first or not. Now that Han Xiling would never appear again, her path in Tiangang sect would be much easier without such a big trouble. She had participated in the assessment competition to prove her strength to the people of Tiangang sect. As long as she was in the top 100, then she could become a member of Tiangang sect, and not because of Di Beichen's protection. Mo Yunjue shook his head. Anyone who opposes you will definitely try their best to find fault with you. Your current results only prove that you are qualified to become a member of the Tiangang sect, but it is not enough to prove that you are qualified to become the young madam of the Tiangang sect. Chapter 1577. What do you mean? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but to ask. She knew that what Mo Yunjue said was true. Just like how Han Hongyi was dissatisfied with her, he would definitely find a way to find fault with her. As long as she didn't meet the requirements, they would magnify the problem. But she was too lazy to care about all of this. With Han Xiling's death, it didn't matter how Han Hongyi tried to find trouble with her, because he had no way of influencing her. As for the other problems, she couldn't guarantee that she would be able to solve them. She could only solve them one by one. In the next moment, under Bailey Hongzhuang's astonished gaze, Mo Yunjue transferred all of his points to Bailey Hongzhuang's points tablet. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask in astonishment, "What are you doing?" Mo Yunjue smiled faintly. "I've already told you before that I don't plan on joining any sections. Hence, these points are useless to me. If your ranking is high enough, there will be less resistance in the future." Bailey Hongzhuang's inky black phoenix eyes rippled as she frowned. "But you can't give me your points. Even if you don't join any other sects, having a good ranking is still a good thing for you." She believed that if Mo Yunjue was really a member of a sect, then the higher his ranking, the higher his status would be when he returned to the sect. If he didn't have any ranking, it wouldn't be a good thing. As she said this, Bailey Hongzhuang prepared to snatch the 2 points tablets from Mo Yunjue's hands. She couldn't let Mo Yunjue sacrifice so much for her. Mo Yunjue didn't let Bailey Hongzhuang snatch the points tablets away. His handsome face quietly became serious. "These points are useless to me, just like Di Beichen. Do you think that if he joined the competition he would care about these points and rankings?" When these words were said, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Then her eyes suddenly changed as she understood the meaning behind Mo Yunjue's words. Chapter 1578. He had always been a man with deep thoughts and would never reveal his inner feelings in front of anyone. Just like how he had been with Bailey Hongzhuang for so long, he could not wait to pour his heart out to Bailey Hongzhuang, but Bailey Hongzhuang was unable to trust him completely. This was because he had always hidden his thoughts too deeply. Trust, this was a word that he had never stopped using. However, after meeting Bailey Hongzhuang, he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's heart could not contain him, so he only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could trust him. He did not ask for anything, he only hoped that when Bailey Hongzhuang needed help, he would be able to help. He had never cared about anything, he did not care about feelings, he did not care about friends, he did not even care about his own life. Back then at the Falling Cloud Mountain range, he had hoped that he would die just like that. It would also be a kind of release. Because living as a walking corpse had gradually numbed his heart, his dark life had caused him to not know what he wanted. He had always been cold-blooded, he felt that even the blood in his bones was cold, but after meeting Bailey Hongzhuang for the first time, he had the urge to understand. Only he had come too late. The heavens had always liked to joke with him, he had never had anything he wanted, and the only time he had had someone he wanted, it did not belong to him. Perhaps, a person like him who walked in the dark was suited to walk alone. When a ray of warm sunlight shone on him, he did not even know what he should do. He had never needed to participate in the assessment competition. To him, this kind of competition was just a waste of time. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had participated, so he had come as well. He was the only one who knew all of this. Even Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know his feelings until now. Now that the assessment competition was about to end, Di Beichen was about to arrive, it was time for him to leave. Before he left, he suddenly felt unreconciled. He should not have felt unreconciled. Even if he had to leave, at least he wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to understand his heart once. At least she should know that he was worthy of her trust. His hands were stained with a lot of blood, good and bad, kind and despicable, the damned innocent, all of it. However, even if he hurt the people of the world, he had never thought of hurting Bailey Hongzhuang. Since Hongzhuang wanted to be with Di Beichen, then he would give her a hand. He didn't want his beloved woman to suffer such grievances. Just like Nangong Xiujie, that kind of dirty guy was enough for him to deal with. In his heart, he knew that a guy like him, whose hands were stained with blood, was not worthy of a person like Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore he only wanted to protect her from afar. As long as she was happy, it was fine. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue in a daze. She never thought that Mo Yunjue would suddenly confess to her. She was caught off guard and her heart was full of shock. Since she met Mo Yunjue, he had been helping her, appearing mysteriously as if he was always around. She never understood why Mo Yunjue would help her like this. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also guessed that Mo Yunjue liked her, but along the way, Mo Yunjue had never shown such emotions. Chapter 1579. However, today Mo Yunjue had suddenly expressed all his thoughts to her. She couldn't react in time, because this was just too shocking. Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was stunned and didn't know what to say. His dark and deep eyes were filled with helplessness. He only wanted to express his feelings and didn't want to make things difficult for Bailey Hongzhuang. In the next moment, Mo Yunjue stood up and said, "I'll go back first. Don't take what I said to heart." With that, Mo Yunjue turned and walked out of the room. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue's back as he turned and left. Her mouth opened and closed, but in the end she only said two words, "Thank you." Towards Mo Yunjue's feelings and help, she didn't have anything to repay him. The only thing she could say was to thank him. Mo Yunjue's figure paused for a moment, and a smile appeared on his handsome face again. However, this smile inevitably added a bit of loneliness. Until Mo Yunjue left the room and closed the door again, Bailey Hongzhuang was still immersed in Mo Yunjue's words. He had said it very simply. Towards this feeling he didn't ask for anything in return. It was because of Mo Yunjue's calmness and selflessness that her heart became heavier. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly understood why Mo Yunjue was so defensive when he asked her if she was related to the Lan family. Mo Yunjue was stunned. Thinking about it, her defense and vigilance had already hurt Mo Yunjue's heart. He treated her with such sincerity, but she was like this. Suddenly Bailey Hongzhuang understood. With Mo Yunjue's status, it was impossible for him to not get along with the cultivators in the team. It was likely that the entire team was Mo Yunjue's people. The so-called not getting along was just an excuse. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a little uncomfortable in her chest, but there was nothing she could do. She also hoped that Mo Yunjue could live well. An outstanding man like Mo Yunjue should have a woman who would treat him wholeheartedly. But she couldn't give him that. She knew that any word she said now would be too weak and wouldn't be able to comfort Mo Yunjue. Perhaps not speaking was also a good thing. She didn't give Mo Yunjue hope because she hoped that he would be able to walk out of it and find his own sky. Her sky had already been filled when Di Beichen appeared. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the points on her card. Mo Yunjue's points were completely beyond her expectations. She couldn't even imagine how Mo Yunjue got so many points. The hand holding the card gradually closed. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was complicated. Finally she put the card into her Chengkuan bag. This was Mo Yunjue's heart and she would cherish it. That night there were many conflicts between cultivators in the city. Many cultivators were trying their best to plunder points. Except for some large dynasty teams that were not disturbed, many cultivators had to participate. The next day, as soon as the sky was bright, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others got up. As soon as they walked out of the door, Xia Jiqing and the others also came out. "Boss, we can get out of the small world today." Xia Jiqing's face couldn't hide the excitement. These 2 years were really tiring and now it was finally over. Chapter 1580. Gong Xiaoqing and the others revealed smiles on their faces. In these 2 years, they had experienced countless dangers to successfully reach where they were now. In these 2 years they had all grown a lot. They had grown from their initial immaturity to their current perseverance. The assessment competition had not only increased their strength, but it had also honed their willpower. This harvest was extremely precious. If they hadn't participated in the assessment competition, not to mention their cultivation wouldn't have improved so much, even their willpower wouldn't have been as tenacious as it was now. These benefits would gradually appear on their future cultivation path and would continue to affect them. Suddenly Bai Junyu frowned. Why hasn't Mo Yunjue come out yet? Dongfang Yu's eyes were filled with doubt. They had been together with Mo Yunjue for such a long time and Mo Yunjue had never been late. It was really strange that he hadn't appeared today. Thinking of this, Dong Fangyu directly walked forward and knocked on Mo Yunjue's door. However, he found that the door wasn't locked. With a gentle push, the door opened. However, there was no sign of Mo Yunjue in the spacious room. Seeing this scene, everyone's face revealed a puzzled expression. Where did Mo Yunjue go? Today is the end of the assessment competition. Where could he have gone? This is really strange. Did he say anything to you? Everyone looked at each other. At this time, Mo Yunjue had suddenly disappeared. This was really too strange. They had been together for so long and had never seen such a thing happen. Could it be that something had happened? Thinking of this possibility, everyone couldn't help but worry. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually changed. Her heart faintly had a bad premonition. Thinking of the things that Mo Yunjue had said to her yesterday, she only felt a burst of depression and pain in her heart. It was because Mo Yunjue had never asked for anything and had always been by her side to help her that she felt a burst of pain in her heart. This feeling was too deep. Mo Yunjue has already left. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. He had come to say goodbye to him yesterday. Just as he had said, Di Beichen was here, so it was time for him to go. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Xia Jiqing and the others all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. They didn't understand why she would answer like this. The competition is ending today. Why did Mo Yunjue leave? Xia Jiqing's face was puzzled. This was too strange. Why did he leave without any movement? Dong Fangyu and the rest were also puzzled. Mo Yunjue's actions had no warning signs, it was too strange. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. He did leave. After saying that, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want to say anything more. She turned around and walked in the direction of the top 100 list. She had no way to explain this matter at all. Just like how Mo Yunjue had been with them for so long, Mo Yunjue had never revealed his thoughts. And she would not reveal Mo Yunjue's thoughts. When everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, the surprise in their hearts was even stronger. It seemed that Hongzhuang must know everything. However, they couldn't guess what was going on behind the scenes. Chapter 1581. Bailey Hongzhuang walked at the front. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's silent expression and no longer asked. Thinking about it, Mo Yunjue must have his reasons for leaving, but they didn't know if they would have a chance to meet again in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang and her group slowly walked to the huge square in the center of the city. The square was so large that it could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. It was so empty that even talking could be heard. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived, there were already many cultivators in the city gathered here. Obviously, after staying in the small world for 2 years, everyone couldn't wait to leave. Looking at such a large square, Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but have a look of amazement on their faces. The entire assessment competition was so big, and the final square was so amazing. In the center of this square there was a large circular platform. Above this high platform, a huge black column stood in the center, as if it was going to pierce the sky. The black column revealed a deep and dark feeling. Even when the sun shone on the black column, it still didn't reflect any light. It was as if everything was absorbed by it, mysterious and shocking. Almost all the cultivators present had their eyes fixed on this column. In a short time, everyone had been able to judge that this black column was the top 100 list. As long as their names could appear on the top 100 list, then they would have an excellent future. The cultivators in the square were constantly talking, and the whole square was extremely noisy. Bailey Hongzhuang's group stood in the middle of the crowd, and in this sea of people they seemed too small, and it was simply difficult to find them. Compared with the joy and noise of the cultivators, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were a little silent. Mo Yunjue's sudden departure made them feel a little depressed. They had been partners for a long time, and their feelings for each other were very strong. In the distance, Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and her group, and his eyes were deep. The cultivators of the Qianfeng dynasty looked at their young master, and their expressions were different. Although they had some guesses in their hearts, they didn't dare to say it. The young lord's thoughts were not something that ordinary people could fathom. However, they all knew that the young master liked Bailey Hongzhuang. This was because the young lord had never done anything useless in all these years. Now that he was participating in the great competition, it was undoubtedly a waste of time. For 2 whole years, there were still many things that needed to be dealt with in the sect. Presumably he had already delayed a lot. In their opinion, with their young master's ability, it was never a problem to make a woman follow him wholeheartedly. However, what the young master had done this time made them somewhat unable to comprehend. Could it be that young lord participated in the assessment to protect Bailey Hongzhuang? Wasn't this a little too incomprehensible? This was not their style of doing things, let alone their cold-blooded and heartless young master. No one understood, but they didn't dare to say anything. They just stood silently beside Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. No matter where she was, that beautiful white figure was unique and could be spotted at a glance. After such a long time, he was almost used to seeing Bailey Hongzhuang the moment he stepped out of his room. Chapter 1582. Bailey Hongzhuang searched the crowd but could not find Mo Yunjue. She knew very well that Mo Yunjue would definitely appear in the crowd today. This was because everyone would leave this place. However, there was a sea of people here. It was too difficult to find a single person. The day before the end of the assessment, Di Beichen had already arrived outside the barrier. At this time, in front of Di Beichen's group, there was a transparent barrier in front of them, preventing them from entering. This was the barrier of the assessment. As long as the time was up, the barrier would open by itself. Unless the time was up, there was no way to open it. This was a rule set during the assessment. It was to prevent people from forcefully entering and affecting the progress of the assessment. Because of the existence of this barrier, once the assessment began, no one would be able to know what was going on inside. Could be said that life and death were up to fate. Standing outside the barrier, Di Beichen's nervous mood inexplicably calmed down. He would know the result tomorrow. These days, as the end of the assessment approached, his mood had become extremely complicated. On one hand, he was extremely excited. As long as the assessment ended, he would be able to see Hongzhuang. On the other hand, he could not help but worry about Hongzhuang's safety. He had never been so nervous and perturbed before. Under such emotions, he simply couldn't calm his heart and cultivate. Therefore, he had already headed to the location where the assessment would end. When Hongzhuang had participated in the assessment, he had said that he would come to bring Hongzhuang back. Now that he was here, he did not ask for Hongzhuang's results. He only wanted Hongzhuang to be safe and sound. After Di Beichen and the rest arrived, many people appeared one after another. Those who appeared were either from sects or aristocratic families. There was no doubt that they had extraordinary backgrounds. This assessment was a competition held by various sects to recruit disciples. However, there were also some aristocratic families' disciples who came to participate in the training. Therefore, most of these aristocratic families were here to bring their own disciples back. Di Beichen's reputation had always been resounding. Among the younger generation of cultivators, Di Beichen could be said to be a representative figure. Therefore, many people here knew him and they all complimented each other. "Young Master Di, why are you here today?" The Yun family elder asked curiously. In every assessment competition, Tiangang sect would inevitably send the great elder, but Di Beichen, as the young lord of Tiangang sect, also came here, which was somewhat unusual. Could it be that Tiangang sect attached special importance to this year's assessment competition? Or did some extraordinary character appear in this year's competition? When he thought of this, the Yun family's elders' eyes lit up. To the top forces of the Xingxian continent, talents were extremely important. In order for a force to continue flourishing, it required an endless supply of talents. When the Yun family elder asked this question, a young man not far away smiled and replied, "Yun family elder, there's something you don't know." The Yun family elder raised his eyebrows in surprise. "I'd like to hear the details." This time, young Master Di's fiancée also entered the assessment competition. "I think young Master Di is here to pick her up." Chapter 1583. Moreover, Tiangang sect had no intention of keeping this news a secret. Therefore, many people already knew about this news. When Di Beichen brought his sweetheart back, the entire Tiangang sect was in an uproar. Almost everyone thought that Di Beichen and Han Shiling would be a couple. No one thought that things would turn out this way. Han Shiling and Bailey Hongzhuang were in constant conflict. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shiling both participated in the assessment competition. It was no wonder that Di Beichen would appear here today. Presumably, Di Beichen was also very worried about this result. Hearing this, the Yun family elder also had an epiphany. So that's how it is. Although the Yun family elder got the answer, his gaze could not help but fall on Di Beichen. He had not heard of Di Beichen's engagement. It seemed that he was really ignorant during this period of time. Di Baichen listened to the conversation between the two but did not answer. This attitude also made them think that he had tacitly agreed. However, seeing that Di Baichen did not have the interest to talk, they did not want to touch this bad luck at the moment. To Di Baichen, Hong Zhuang was not his fiancée, but his real wife. He had already discussed with his master. After they rescued Hong Zhuang's parents, he would marry Hong Zhuang and let Hong Zhuang become the wife of the young sect master of Tiangang sect. Hong Zhuang had always been a woman with a pure heart. She just did not want him to bear the pressure, so she chose to bear it herself. She was so beautiful, so considerate, and even made people feel a little sorry for her. After the assessment competition ended, he would definitely not let Hong Zhuang suffer anymore. Time gradually passed. Finally, the barrier in front of him rotated and opened. It was as if the mirror had suddenly started to rotate. In the process of this rotation, Di Baichen saw the enchantment in front of him gradually disappear, and a side of the world appeared in front of him. His mood was unprecedentedly excited, and he stood there for a long time without moving. Young master. Heimu couldn't help but remind them as the surrounding people had already walked inside. He had grown up with the young lord since he was young, but he had never seen the young lord miss someone so much. Just from the young master's usual behavior, he could tell how much the young master missed the young madam. He only hoped that the young master could quickly reunite with the young madam. Upon hearing Heimu's words, Di Baichen nodded his head. Only then did he take a step forward. However, the worry in his eyes never dissipated. A group of cultivators from the heaven-devouring tower had coincidentally arrived the moment the barrier of the examination competition opened. They immediately followed the crowd and walked in. Seeing the appearance of the cultivators from the heaven-devouring tower, everyone's eyes were filled with doubts. The assessment competition this time is really strange. Not only did the young master of the Tiangang sect come, why did the people from the heaven-devouring tower come as well? The heaven-devouring tower usually does not appear in such an occasion. Even if the people from the heaven-devouring tower participate in the assessment competition, they will not ask for any results. This time they actually send people to welcome them. This is really strange. Could it be that some big shot from the heaven-devouring tower is participating in the assessment competition? It's impossible for the big shot from the heaven-devouring tower to participate in the assessment competition. Everyone was discussing spiritedly and they were extremely puzzled. The heaven-devouring tower was an extremely special existence in the Xingxian continent. It was a force completely shrouded in darkness. Chapter 1584. Normally, everyone would keep a certain distance from it. There were even some righteous sects that disdained such an existence. However, countless people sought the help of the Heaven Slaughter Tower every day. There were too many things in this world that could not be done openly. Therefore, no matter how much everyone disdained the Heaven Slaughter Tower, the Heaven Slaughter Tower still did things their own way. They were still one of the most powerful forces in the Xingxian continent. No one would provoke the Heaven Slaughter Tower. Once they did, it would be like stirring up a hornet's nest. No one could bear the consequences. Di Baichen's gaze swept past the cultivators of the Heaven Slaughter Tower. He had also sought the help of the Heaven Slaughter Tower a few days ago, but the result was that the young master was not around and could not help for the time being. Now, he saw the cultivators of the Heaven Slaughter Tower in this assessment competition. Could it be that their young master was in this assessment competition? Although this idea was extremely absurd, Di Baichen had a faint premonition in his heart that perhaps everything was as he thought. Everyone walked into the whirlpool and directly jumped down from mid-air. In the central square, a group of cultivators were waiting excitedly. Suddenly, an energy fluctuation attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's eyes were fixed in mid-air. A whirlpool appeared in the cloud. Then the whirlpool gradually grew bigger, like a mysterious and magnificent seven-colored cloud. Under everyone's shocked gaze, a huge spatial passage appeared out of thin air, as if someone had poked a big hole in the sky. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. This was too shocking. Previously, everyone had only been teleported. In the blink of an eye, they had already appeared in the small world. However, they had never seen anyone directly tear open a spatial crack. With the appearance of this vortex, figures jumped down from above. Dazzling light shrouded them. Everyone could only see the figures clearly, but they could not see their true faces. The location of this vortex corresponded to the high platform in the central square. Figures appeared on the high platform one after another. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 people had appeared on the high platform. Seeing this, The eyes of all the cultivators present were filled with amazement and yearning. If their judgment was correct, these cultivators on the high platform were the representatives of various sects. Sects, that was something that they could only dream of but never reach before. Now, after 2 years of hard work, they could finally meet the people of the sect. The cultivators of some large empires had some understanding of each sect. The more powerful the empire was, the more cultivators there would be who could become a sect's disciple. So, even though sects were far away for cultivators from large dynasties, it wasn't impossible. But to the cultivators of some small and medium-sized dynasties, it was no different than an existence of legend. At this moment, they actually had the opportunity to meet some of the important figures in the sect. Even if they didn't have the qualifications to become a member of the sect, they would still have something to brag about when they returned. Soon, the 20 or so people stood on the high platform. Even though there were more than 20 people standing on top of the huge circular platform, it still seemed empty. In the next moment, everyone heard a slight sound. Then, a table and chairs appeared on the high platform. Chapter 1585. After everyone was seated, an old man appeared in front of everyone. With a wave of his hand, the dazzling light in front of everyone disappeared. The cultivators below the high platform could finally see the cultivator on the high platform clearly. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them in amazement. Their curious gazes all looked towards the person sitting on the high platform. Everyone could only feel a strong wave of origin energy emanating from the figure on the high platform. Just this feeling alone was enough to make people gasp in amazement. This is the elder of the sect. This origin energy fluctuation is too shocking. The sect is indeed different from the rest. Just this aura alone is enough to make people gasp in amazement. Oh my God, if I become a cultivator in the sect, will I be so powerful in the future? For a moment, everyone's heart was filled with a strong yearning. This kind of powerhouse was their goal in the future. There were only about 10 cultivators sitting on the high platform. Among them there were only 10 who represented the sect. Naturally there were more than 10 sects, but only 10 of them were qualified to sit here. This was because these 10 people represented the top 10 super sects. Only the top 100 cultivators were qualified to enter the top 10 sections. Those who were not on the top 100 had the opportunity to enter a sect. They could still enter a small sect. Although small sects and big sects were both sects, whether it was the sect's strength, influence or cultivation resources, they could not be compared to the top 10 sects. In the past, the top 10 of the assessment competition were free to choose which sect to enter. As for the remaining 90, they were determined to enter the top 10 sections. No matter what, at least they could enter the top 10 sections. As for those who were below the top 100, they could only rely on their luck. Although these big sects required a lot of manpower, they were more inclined towards quality than quantity. Moreover, they did not only select talents through the assessment competition. Di Baichen sat in his seat. In the past, the first elder would come to recruit talents in the assessment competition. However, this time it was his turn. Originally, the first elder wanted to come with him, but he rejected him. He was very clear about the first elder's dissatisfaction with Hong Zhuang. If the first elder came today, he would definitely stir up trouble again. He didn't want the great elder to ruin his reunion with Hong Zhuang. At this moment, an elder in his 60s stood in the center of the high platform. He wore a gray robe and his hair was white. He gave off an aura of vicissitude and majesty. This person was one of the 10 great sects, Limitless Palace's elder, Gu Tai-hong. He was very experienced and powerful, so everyone tacitly agreed to let him say the opening words. Today is the day of the competition. 2 years ago all of you came here. Through 2 years of hard work, killing and training, I believe that all of you have made great progress. No matter how high or low your points are, I want to tell you that those who have made it this far are all winners. Gu Tai-hong's voice was embellished, and it was clearly transmitted into the ears of every cultivator present. As soon as he said that, the eyes of the young cultivators present lit up with excitement. Chapter 1586. Along the way, fighting, escaping, the intertwining of blood and sweat, the promotion of climbing, the fall of their teammates, impacted their hearts again and again. How many times did they want to give up but couldn't? How many times did they grit their teeth and insist on hunting monsters? Until today, Gu Tai-hong's words undoubtedly gave them too much affirmation. Even if the past 2 years have been very hard, only through such experience can you grow better. When you go back, your dynasty, your family, your relatives will be proud of you. So, do you think it's all worth it? It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Wave after wave of voices swept out from the central square. Everyone felt as if they had an endless amount of energy in their bodies. Back then they had risked their lives to come here, all for the sake of such glory. Seeing the crowd so excited, the elders on the high platform also showed a gratified smile on their faces. The young people's ambition made them unable to help but be infected. They had to admit that Gu Taihong's words were very powerful. Listening to such words, everyone seemed to see themselves struggling in the past. At the beginning they also experienced such a scene and eventually became elders respected by everyone. Compared to the joy of the other elders, Di Beichen was somewhat absent-minded. His eyes had been turning around in the crowd, looking for the white figure that he had been dreaming of. However, there were too many cultivators at the scene. It was too difficult to find a single person among the densely packed crowd. However, he believed that no matter how many people there were, he could still find his beloved Hong Zhuang at a glance. Because, no matter when, Hong Zhuang was a special existence in his eyes. At the same time, Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others also noticed the existence of Di Beichen. In their line of sight, Di Beichen was still wearing a pale golden robe. His face was as handsome as a knife. His long eyebrows reached his temples and his narrow eyes were deep. He was like an impeccable sculpture, making people unable to look away. There was a touch of excitement in Xia Jiqing's eyes. "Boss, look, young Master Di is already here." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were locked on Di Beichen's body. After not seeing him for 2 years, he was the same as before. The only change was that his edges were more distinct, and his deep eyes had become more determined. There was a happy smile on her beautiful face. Beichen said that he would come to pick her up, and now he really came. Gong Shaoqing and the others' eyes also fell on Di Beichen. This was the gap between Di Beichen and them. Di Beichen, who was sitting on the high platform, seemed to have infinite brilliance shining on his body. He was noble, dazzling, and noble. After Yuan Xiaoman and Yuan Jixin saw Di Beichen sitting on the high platform, their faces were full of shock. When Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang went to the snow country together, none of them knew that Di Beichen was the young lord of Tiangang's sect. This news was simply too shocking for them. He Mu's eyes kept scanning the crowd, but there were too many people and he couldn't find the young lady at all. He kept praying in his heart, only hoping that the young lady would be safe and not be hurt by Han Xiling. Only when the young lady was by the young lord's side could the young lord be truly happy. Chapter 1587. While He Mu was feeling anxious, Di Beichen's gaze had already focused on a white figure in the distance. When he saw this white figure, Di Beichen's originally tense heart instantly relaxed. All of his worries and nervousness disappeared, leaving behind only excitement and joy. Even though the distance between them was very far, with just a quick glance, he was already certain that it was Hong Zhuang. In this world, a woman like Hong Zhuang was an extremely rare existence. Her every frown, smile, anger were all so different from others. Even her posture was an existence that stood out from the rest of the world. Bailey Hongzhuang was staring at Di Beichen. Suddenly, she discovered that Di Beichen's gaze had also turned towards her. The smile in her eyes couldn't help but deepen. Separated by a distance, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. All of their thoughts were reflected in this smile. Not far away, Mo Yunjue also noticed the gaze of Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang. He had to admit that Di Beichen was also extremely sincere towards Bailey Hongzhuang. If not, he wouldn't have been able to find Bailey Hongzhuang in the vast sea of people with just a glance. If his opponent was an ordinary cultivator, then he might still have a chance to fight, but his opponent was Di Beichen, so this chance was likely to disappear. He didn't think that his strength or other aspects were inferior to Di Beichen. Just comparing his status with Di Beichen, presumably most people would choose Di Beichen. Moreover, Di Beichen was so sincere. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other, the gazes of many women also fell on Di Beichen. There were many people on the high platform, but it was undeniable that Di Beichen was the most dazzling existence among them. Heavens, who is that golden-robed young master? He was simply too handsome. I'm going to be mesmerized by him. He's about the same age as us, but he's able to sit on the high platform. His identity must be extraordinary. You are ignorant. The person above is the young lord of Tiangang sect, Di Beichen. Young lord of Tiangang sect? After someone revealed Di Beichen's identity, The women in the crowd became even more excited. Originally they had only thought that Di Beichen was a young elder of some sect. Once his identity had changed to that of a young sect leader, it would be even more incredible. Young sect master, what kind of powerful existence was that? If they were able to become young sect master's sweetheart, why would they need to work so hard like now? That was young sect mistress. What kind of noble status was that? For a time, many women tidied up their hair and looked at Di Beichen. They only hoped that they could be the lucky Cinderella. At the same time, a woman standing in front of Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but exclaim, "Young sect master is looking at me. He's smiling at me." Seeing this scene, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but laugh out loud. This girl was too funny. Di Beichen was obviously smiling at the boss. Her imagination was really good. Boss, Di Beichen's charm is a bit too amazing. Just a smile and these women are already dizzy. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but sigh. A man like Di Beichen was too monstrous. Except for the boss, who was a perfect woman who could control him, other women simply didn't have that ability. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.